did not know that your alma mater, the University of North Texas, when I looked it up, it looks close to an osprey, but in fact, it's the eagle. So in that your mascot is Scrappy the Eagle. So welcome, and thank you so much for being our speaker today.
Thank you so much. I appreciate the invite. I love speaking to the Rotary Club. As some of you know, I spoke to the Rotary Club of Jacksonville a few weeks ago, so I was happy to get the invite to speak to you all as the Rotary Club of South Jacksonville. Actually, when I was back in Texas, so in case you weren't here for the beginning of the meeting, I was born and raised in East Texas. I have to say, Texas is a pretty great state. Florida's great too, but Texas is great. I'll let your wife hold that title that she was the last best thing to come out of Texas. But I'm from a small town called White House, Texas, also the home of Patrick Mahomes. My brother actually my younger brother went to high school with him and played football with him back in the day in White House, Texas. So you can imagine that's kind of put us on the map a little bit, having Patrick Mahomes come from our hometown. I'm just hoping maybe I can get a little bit of that salary he has now. Maybe he can lend me a few bucks. But once again, thank you all so much for this invitation to just kind of tell you a little bit about myself in case you don't know. I grew up in Texas, as I mentioned, in East Texas, had no idea I would ever go into journalism. In fact, I went to become a doctor one day. That was my goal. And I was in a high school and I started doing a few AP biology classes and doing some dissections. And my teacher would come over and say, I have no idea what you just did to this poor animal that you dissected. And I said, you know what, maybe I need to find a new career. So one day we had a college fair and I saw that you could major in broadcast journalism. I had no idea that that was even something you could do. I just assumed that to become a television reporter or a news anchor, you just kind of auditioned like an actor would. But I learned that you could actually get your journalism degree. So I had a way to get my way into a local TV station in my hometown. I did my internship, loved it, decided I was not turning back. In fact, I was supposed to go to Baylor University. That's where I was going to go. And with my plans of eventually going to medical school, I switched a month before school was about to start so I could go to North Texas to get my broadcast journalism degree. So I received my major in broadcast news and a minor in social science. And I guess you could say the rest is history. I've been in the business for about 13 years now, and I've been here in Jacksonville. In January, it'll be about 5 years for me. So I love Florida. I love being here. I have no plans of leaving anytime soon unless it's to go back to the great state of Texas, to my hometown. But this has basically become my home now, so I love being here. So something I kind of want to talk with you all about today, something I spoke with the last Rotary group about, is separating fact from fiction when it comes to the news that you may see, the news that you may share, and exactly how our industry works. Because unfortunately, a term that has become popular in this industry, fake news. We hear it all the time. We receive phone calls. We hear it from our friends, our family. We get emails. We hear it all the time about suddenly we are now fake news, which makes our jobs very challenging in this particular climate. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with you and just kind of tell you about our goals as a journalist. So let me go ahead and do that with you right now. Okay. So right now on your screen, you should be looking at the principles of ethical journalism. This is what our company, these are the principles that we strive to follow every single day. So you see here, principles of ethical journalism. We are committed to the highest ethical standards and dedicated to the principles of truth, independence, public interest, fair play, and integrity. These principles apply to everything we do, from gathering information to reporting and also producing content. So let's start with truth here. So our goal every day is to report the news accurately, thoroughly, and in context on all platforms. I will tell you something that has changed about my job. Even when I started in this business about 13 years ago, I remember my boss, he didn't allow us to have Facebook, or I'm not sure if Twitter was exactly popular at that time, but he didn't allow us to have Facebook, Twitter, any type of social media on our work computers because he thought it was a waste of time. As you can imagine, in this day and age, everything has moved to digital first. It used to be that you would wait to go home and watch the 6 o'clock news, but in this day and age that we're living in, people are simply not home at that time. So now we have become not only television, but also digital. So we strive every day to put everything basically on our digital platform before you see it on TV, because honestly, that's where we see more viewers now. So Facebook, Twitter, all parts of social media, we continue to gather the most news information that we can to get it out to you a lot sooner. So One of our other goals too, vet sources, verify facts, and challenge your own assumptions before reporting news. Hold factual information on all platforms to the same standards of accuracy. One thing that our TV station does, we do a segment called Verify, because we want to walk our viewers through exactly what we do to gather the information that we get. So that means being transparent and showing you everything, the beginning step of the day to the very end, on how we got our final conclusion. We tell you the people we interviewed, what they told us, and how we used all that information in order to put our stories together and bring you the most accurate information that we can. Also, seek sufficient understanding of the communities, individuals, and stories we cover to inform the public. Be persistent in the pursuit of the whole story. I will tell you, my job as a news anchor, I'm kind of like the final gatekeeper when it comes to presenting you the news at 5, 6, 11, or whenever it may be. We have a team of producers and reporters who do a lot of the writing, but I'm the final gatekeeper to make sure that that information that we're passing to you is accurate. Also, be honest. Do not mislead sources, story subjects, or the public. We want to be as transparent as possible. I don't want to tell you that I'm calling you up and I'm going to interview you about your favorite pizza restaurant, and then suddenly I'm going to turn it into basically how you're the biggest pizza hater in all of the First Coast. That's not our goal. When I tell you the story I'm going to do, that I'm going to interview about, that is my job in the end, is to present that information to you as accurately and also truthfully as possible. Also, attribute information received from others and be transparent with sourcing. Never plagiarize. Keep your word. That's a big deal as a journalist in this day and age. To earn trust, we must keep our word. Also, do not misstate your identity or intentions. Also, do not intentionally slant the news. I know a lot of people think that we do that. That is not our intention whatsoever. We do not want to intentionally slant the news. Now, I will tell you, because this is a question that I get a lot. And also, I'm going to tell you, too, after I'm done with this presentation, feel free to ask any questions you may have. I'm an open book. I won't be offended at all. I'll try to answer your questions as best as I can about the news business, or just anything, any stories or questions you may have in general. But I will tell you, from a cable news aspect, when you have news companies like Fox News, MSNBC, there is a little bit of bias in their reporting. That's cable news. That's not the same as local news or even the network news like NBC, ABC, CBS. Our goal is to be down the middle. But when it comes to cable news, they do have their certain audiences. Fox News is going to be a little bit more conservative. MSNBC, of course, is going to be a little bit more liberal. My goal to you, and this is what I tell everyone, watch both, because it's so important that you look at both of those sources to balance out the information that you receive. Because I always say it's his story, her story, and somewhere in the middle is the actual truth. So when it comes to gathering news, be sure that you watch as many sources as you can to get the entire picture. Also, always value being accurate over being first. That is so important, especially in this day and age where we're trying to get as much attention as we can, get the news out quicker, because people want that information a lot faster than they did in the past. No one is basically waiting around anymore like they used to until the news comes on. You have your phone in your hand and you can get the information at the push of a button. But it's so important that we be accurate over being first, because one thing that I hate, and unfortunately this has happened in my career, you send out information that is incorrect, then you have to go on air and issue a retraction saying that, we made a mistake. Now, of course, we're human. Mistakes happen. That can happen to anyone, but that is so embarrassing when things like that happen. So I always say, make sure we have the facts first before we send any information out to our viewers, because that is our credibility. That's going to determine how much you trust us, especially in this day and age. So those are just like a few things there that we do when it comes to our daily news gathering. I also have a PowerPoint presentation. This is actually a training that I went through. Let me go ahead and pull up my Zoom here and get this all. Let's see if I can go ahead and all right, pulling up our slideshow here. You guys see, can you see my PowerPoint right now? Let's see.
No.
Let's see.
No.
It says it.
I think
There
that's
we
a
go.
no.
I lost my, there we go. Lost my screen for a minute.
I see it. Truth and independence.
All right, there you go. You should be able to see Introduction to Information Disorder, Known Tactics and Techniques.
Got it.
All right, so we're gonna go over a few things here. This is actually a training that I went through with our company when it talks about just different ways of remaining factual when you're sharing information. It's basically separating fact from fiction. So up here you see types of information disorder. So we have falseness. Is this information inaccurate? And you also have intent to harm. Is this information created to cause harm? So in the middle here, you have disinformation. That's when people intentionally create or share false information in order to harm someone. Fabricated news websites, a good example of that. Unfortunately, there are so many news websites out there that look real, that people love to share on social media, that are not true. And a lot of basically people who want to get out the wrong information or create their own narratives, they are stealing graphics from actual news stations to use on their own websites, and many people will actually believe it, unfortunately. Also, manipulated audio or visual content. Also, some conspiracy theories. So many conspiracy theories out there right now when it comes to the coronavirus. Trust me, we hear them all every day. Also, rumors and more. Now, when it comes to misinformation, that's when people unintentionally make mistakes. Inaccurate photo captions, dates, statistics, or translations, or when satire is taken seriously. I'm sure a lot of you are all familiar with memes out there. Memes have become so popular, and some people are using that to share political information or whatever it may be. And some people are just making them as jokes, but unfortunately, in this day and age, some people will take that as the gospel truth when they see those memes. So that's making our business a lot harder. Also, you have malinformation. That's when people publicize accurate but private information to harm someone. Examples of that would be revenge porn or leaks that pursue private rather than public interest. I'm going to go ahead and move on to the next slide here and show you just an example of misleading content. So this was actually published, I believe this was published in the New York Times back in August of 2018, so 2 years ago. Now you're looking here at different sizes of gavels. So this is President Trump's gavel right here. Showing 24. You have Obama with 15. You have George Bush with 16 here, Bill Clinton with 18. George Bush 18, Ronald Reagan over here with 19. So this illustration is comparing presidential confirmations of appellate judgeships. And it's misleading here because the size of the gavels are not to scale. President Trump's gavel should be less than twice as big as President Obama's. So you see here, Obama's is 15, President Trump's is 24, but his is twice as big, which that can be misleading. Now let's take a look at our next example here. This is something that was tweeted out. This is false context. So someone tweeted out, this Muslim woman was paying no mind to this terror attack, casually walking by a dying man while checking her phone. And then you see hashtag pray for London, Westminster. Well, everything is not as it seems. So that's what this picture led you to believe, that this woman was paying no mind to this man who had been a victim of a terror attack and that she was just casually walking by. Well, this account was actually associated with a Russian disinformation campaign, and it implies that this woman was just indifferent to the attack, to the victim. But in reality, she was not looking at the victim out of respect. Now, that account has since been deleted, but this was actually reported in The Guardian in September of last year. So there's so many things with this social media age that they're published on social media without any context. People can create their own narratives. Now, here's an example of imposter content. You see here, this looks like it could be believable. You have a breaking news graphic, and you see here, this headline says, the general election will be held over 2 days. Well, someone might see this and believe that this is actually true, but this is something that someone had actually created, and they used this graphic. They probably stole it from another news station off of Google, and they made their own news. Of course, we know the general election is not going to be held over 2 days. Also, if you take a look at this picture here on your right, this is saying that a video is circulating with the Now This branding, which is a news source, about the Clintons and also alleged rape victims. Now, someone produced this video and put Now This all of their graphics and labels on here, leading you to believe that they were the ones who tweeted out that information when they were not. Someone created this video on their own and used the graphics, but unfortunately it looked so real, a lot of people believe that that was true and that they had produced that video. Now here is an example of manipulated content. You have a magazine cover from Teen Vogue, and you see here, you see the young ladies standing here, they have basically a target that they're holding from a gun range there. And that's how it was published. But someone actually changed it to make it look like that they were about to rip up the Constitution. Unfortunately, once again, a lot of people will only see the one on the right and believe that that is what was actually published without going back to the original source to see what actually was actually published or what may have aired on TV. So it's so important. And I will tell you this too. There are different things that you can do on Google, for example, where you can take a picture and do a reverse image search to basically see what was the original source. So anytime that you may have questions about a picture or maybe a comment or some type of quote that you see on the internet, always go back and look it up first to see who actually said this, and maybe was there an original picture that I didn't see first. It's so important that you do that before you share any information that may not be true, because once it's shared, you know how quickly something can become viral. It's picked up and shared by thousands, maybe even millions, and people believe that's the gospel truth. And once that's accepted, it's hard to go back and disprove the information that's been shared. Let's take a look at this next slide. Fabricated content, for example. This graphic here, it says that Pope Francis shocks the world, endorses Donald Trump for president, releases a statement. At this time, this was not true, but someone had created this to look like a news article. They have the picture of the Pope and also the president next to each other to make it seem like this actually happened when that was not the case. This is a video I want to show you showing how video can easily be manipulated. There are a lot of people out there with some great editing skills that can basically make any video look like it's real. They can basically put words into people's mouths. So I'm going to show you this video right here of Nancy Pelosi speaking and how someone was able to alter her speech to make it seem like she was slurring.
An altered video of Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi has been circulating online. The video appears to show Speaker Pelosi slurring her words, but it is actually slowed down to create that effect. Well, here's a look at the doctored video next to the actual video.
We want to give this president the opportunity to do something historic for our country. We want to give this president the opportunity to do something historic for our country.
Jacob Ward covers tech for us in San Francisco. Jacob, how do videos like this one spread so far online so fast, despite people acknowledging, people flagging them that they're fake?
You know, David, it's such an exciting thing that you want to talk about this, because I just think it's the craziest story. I mean, for one thing, this is the dumbest, simplest form of video alteration around. The slowing down the audio, that is easy, man. There's nothing to it. And yet, because it falls into what so many people politically desire to see, which is, of course, what all of these algorithms tend to promote, it just spreads like wildfire. So across social media, you're seeing it just spread and spread and spread because of, you know, a combination of this incredibly simple piece of technology plus confirmation bias.
Jacob, we are like a year and a half out before the election, and we see how quickly this spread, how widely it got picked up. Help us understand the danger of these videos, these dumb edits, as you call them, ahead of the 2020 election.
I mean, for one thing, right, it obviously pierces our ability to think critically about this stuff. Over 1 million people are watching this in every place that it gets posted. And so you're just seeing it spread in this incredible way that I'm not sure how one controls. At the same time, this is just the beginning. I mean, in the same week that this came out, Samsung released an incredible new piece of research that basically shows that they can create a totally fake talking head just like mine right now. And in that case, you know, between the sort of the incredible amount of political disinformation we're going to see both at home and abroad, plus the technology, you know, it's really a scary moment here, David. I think we're really going to face a new kind of disinformation era.
Jacob, take us behind the walls of some of the companies that are near you in San Francisco who are trying to combat all of this. We saw Facebook out with.
So there you saw just an example of some of the video that can possibly be altered, and people will believe that it is actually real. I want to go ahead and go to some important takeaways from here. Visuals and memes are compelling vehicles of information, of disinformation. So I mentioned that earlier. You see a collection of memes here that people have basically created. And unfortunately, some people will see these memes and believe that they are actually true. Once again, if you see one of these memes or a picture and something may seem a little off to you, go back and look at the original source to see where this picture came from, where this quote came from. It's so easy for someone to take a picture in this day and age and put a random quote on it and share it as fact, when that's simply not the case. Now this next, actually I'm gonna go to another one here. Some other techniques of manipulation. Sock puppets. These are anonymous accounts, whether it be robots, human, or hybrid, pretending to be something that they are not. Social media robots are very popular on Twitter, also Facebook, basically these fake accounts that share information out there, and their intentions are to persuade people to a certain belief. Now, how you recognize a robot, they're normally not going to have a real picture, or the picture is going to be someone else, not them. They usually don't have a lot of followers. So if you see some information coming from a social media account where the people don't have a lot of followers, they're not verified, the picture is not of a person, or it's of a person that's basically not them, be careful with that, because that can happen more than you know it. It can happen to the media too. You see here, this article says thousands of Twitter bots targeted Kentucky with fake news on election night. It's so easy to do in this day of social media. Also, imposter content, using trusted logos, brandings, or names as a shortcut for credibility. I mentioned this earlier, how people will steal graphics from news stations, from newspapers, and create their own articles. You can see that this happened here with the Miami Herald. Someone stole this article and basically created their own information and spread that out to thousands of people. Also, source hacking, manipulating the news media and influential figures through lies and deception. Unfortunately, this happens. This is why it's so important for people in our industry to fact check before we publish anything, to make sure that it's actually true. Also, keyword squatting and platform manipulation, associating a word with a different worldview. That's something else that's really popular. As you can see here, someone using the hashtag voter fraud and sending out information that was not necessarily true. Also, intentional denials of service, information bombardment to overwhelm and confuse. This happens all the time. People will just basically spew a lot of information out there, and people don't have the time to go through it, and they just accept it as fact. So those are just some examples there of things that we are now facing in our industry. So once again, the key takeaway that I would tell everyone when it comes to sharing information out there, making sure that you are educated on the news that you're sharing or following. Read everything that you can. Watch everything that you can. Make sure that you're getting your news from a variety of sources to make sure that you have the most accurate picture possible and that you have the correct information before you share anything. Now, something that I was asked in my last presentation, what websites can we go to? Snopes, S-N-O-P-E-S. That is a good website to go to do some fact checking. Also, PolitiFact. That's P-O-L-T-I-F-A-C-T. Another great website to go to make sure when it comes to politics that the information that is out there, that it has been fact-checked and vetted properly. So once again, I tell you, fake news has become a word that we hear all the time. That's not our goal. Your local news, we are trying to do the best news possible for our community, to keep our community informed and also help our community. That is not our goal at all. So we are here for you. We're trying to do everything that we can for you. But, you know, unfortunately, our jobs have become more difficult in this climate. But once again, we're just good people. We don't have agendas. We are trying to do the best that we can for our community. So if anyone has any questions, feel free to ask, and I will try to answer them to the best of my ability.
Yeah, Anthony, thank you. This is Lisa Marie. Let me get my camera back on. Thank you so much for that. Really appreciate it, especially in today's day and time. Your comment about fact checking, just your perspective or opinion on, you know, when the news started being reporting way back, most Americans, it was because we didn't have access to the resources and we trusted those news reporters to be giving us the information. Now we find that we don't have time, right? So, you know, fact checking and some of those sites, some of us do it, not everybody does, because there's not really time. You get your information in quick snippets.
Right.
what's the best way for us to navigate that as we move forward and take accountability as consumers of that information?
And that's something that's challenging for us too, I would say, especially in TV news, because someone asked a question similar to yours at the last Rotary Club presentation that I did, because, newspaper, they have more time, they can put more information in an article because they can take up a whole page if they need to. In TV news, it's a lot different. We have our newscasts are usually, in 30-minute increments, and we also have to get weather and sports in there as well. So a news story usually runs maybe a minute 20. Out of all of that. So we're trying to put all of the information we can in a short amount of time, but we try to put maybe a longer story on digital. But it's so important when you do just get those short snippets of an article or whatever it may be, that you continue to look into it when you can, without just taking that information as the gospel truth. As I said, you have to continue to read from all sources and look into all backgrounds when it comes to any news story.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Yep, Mr. Austin,
Mhm.
this is William Harrell. There's a lot of criticism of the public about the media, which you've done a nice job of addressing, and you've described in extreme detail the problems we ought to watch for. Does the media not have an equal criticism of the public of doing a pretty poor job of diligently fact-checking ourselves? Is there as much criticism backwards? Maybe you can't say it, but
I will tell you, Mr. Harrell, I mean, there is, it's frustrating, especially when we receive these emails and phone calls criticizing us for not sharing this information, or saying that we were incorrect, or, calling us all kinds of names. It is, but we try to do our jobs. You guys are our audience, and we try to make sure that we are serving you the best way that we can. But I will have to tell you, it goes from both ends. It is frustrating when we see the public criticizing us for something that we didn't necessarily do. I will tell you, I got an email from a viewer the other day saying that I was mocking a comment from a sheriff in Marion County about his thoughts on people wearing masks. It was something that I never said it at all. So she had basically put words in my mouth of something that I never said during the newscast. So it can be frustrating, I will tell you that.
So Anthony, I think that you all do a very nice job balancing the good and the bad news. Do you find that, or which do you find plays better from your viewers? Do you feel that people tune in more to see something dramatic like the world is blowing up, as opposed to some feel good Samaritan kind of story? I mean, I've always thought you all did a good job balancing that. Not everyone does that.
And that is our goal every day. If we're going to give you the bad, we want to also tell you about the good things that are happening in the world, because that's important. The world is not a completely bad place, although it may seem like that, especially this year. But, there's also people out there doing a lot of good. And, that's an interesting question that you bring, because one criticism that I hear a lot, people say, I don't watch the news because all you talk about is death and destruction. We want more positive news. We want more positive stories. So we try to bring them that. But, something that I found, I always make this comparison. You see shows like Dateline in 2020, these murder mysteries are so popular, these podcasts. I think it's kind of that syndrome of people passing a bad car wreck and you just kind of want to look. So I think people do want good news, but they still, sometimes that's what they gravitate toward, is unfortunately the bad news as well.
So also I wanted to ask, do you feel that that being a local news station, that you have a lot of competition with national news in terms of getting people tuning in, or do you feel good about your local viewership?
No, I wouldn't say that we really, I mean, in certain aspects, I think that we face competition with the network news and also cable news. I'll give you an example with the Democratic National Convention and also the Republican National Convention. I feel like most people were either watching Fox News or MSNBC or whatever it may be. They weren't necessarily watching the networks. They were kind of watching those particular channels because, once again, those cable channels they play to a particular audience. And I think people pretty much had their minds made up about where they were going to watch it. So I would say that that's something that we're probably facing that you wouldn't have in the past, when we just had the networks, the big three, NBC, ABC, and CBS. But when it comes to local news, we are committed to trying to be local. So this is where you come to find out what's happening in your community. We want to share your stories as opposed to the network is giving you a broad overview of what's happening across the world. And, you know, this is another question that people ask me sometimes too. We are an NBC and ABC affiliate, but we're just an affiliate. We're not actually owned by NBC or ABC. There are some TV stations, especially like New York, some of the bigger markets where they are actually owned by the network, but we are owned by a company called Tegna, and we own several TV stations across the country, but NBC and ABC, they are not our actual boss, so to speak. We do share content, et cetera, but they're not making the daily decisions on the network level, what we do here locally.
That's an interesting distinction.
Mm-hmm.
What
Sorry,
are the,
Jason.
I'm sorry, what are the 2 or 3 stories that you're interested in following and reporting on in the near future?
I will tell you my favorite type of stories to cover, human interest. I love stories about people who have went through some great odd that they have overcome. I love hearing the stories of perseverance, people who have just basically been at the very bottom and they've been able to pull themselves up. I love those stories that inspire. That's my kind of goal. I love telling stories that help people. I've been doing a segment.
Give me a call. Give me a call about that. I'll tell you about it.
I will. I would love that. Also, I've been doing a segment since sort of the beginning of the pandemic called Now Hiring, where we feature local jobs and companies who are looking for employees. And one of my greatest, something that just made my heart swell, I guess you could say, was receiving a call from someone who found a job, and a well-paying job at that, through one of those stories. So that's my goal. If I can do anything that can help people, that can inspire people, just make their lives better, that's the kind of news that I like to cover.
You have a question in the chat.
Yeah, I see here, Mr. Austin, do they ever take a representative poll of news people and their personal party and how the percents falls, just to see if there is diversity of thought, position, or represented in the news arena? I'm so glad that you asked this question, because I mentioned, I meant to mention this earlier. When it comes to news people and their personal parties, we've always been taught to be neutral. When you get your journalism degree, that's one thing that you're taught, is to not take sides, to be neutral, straight down the middle. I can say for myself, I can't speak for everyone, I'm actually a registered independent. I have no allegiance to either party. If you looked up my voting record right now, you will see that I'm a registered independent, and that's really how everyone should be. But there are people out there who have their own beliefs. That's not something we discuss, because we took that oath to be down the middle. But I can just tell you for myself, I am a registered independent.
Okay. Anybody else have a question for Anthony?
Tom?
Yes.
I have a question. Mr. Austin, being part of a corporate entity, is there any sort of dictate that would come down from the corporation C-suite to cover certain things in certain ways?
You know, that's a good question as well. From our company, no, they give us guidance, but they don't tell us how to cover the news. Now, what I shared with you at the beginning of the meeting about kind of our pillars of being truthful and independent and bringing the most accurate information possible, that's what we follow. Now, there was something in the news, and in fact, one of my own friends shared this video the other day of, maybe you saw this video on YouTube, it shows several TV stations across the country, and they're all reading from the same script. That was a Sinclair station. There are no Sinclair stations here in Jacksonville. But that was a Sinclair mandate, basically, which got a lot of backlash. And actually, a lot of people within those TV stations did not want to do that, where they were told to basically read from the same script. That did happen. I will acknowledge that that was real, but that's not the majority. That was more of the minority with that particular TV group. But usually our ownership groups, they give us guidance, but it's not telling you what kind of news we should put out there.
Mr. This is just. Go ahead. This is a complete subject change, but I'm just curious. Mr. Austin, can you kind of comment a little bit about what things are like when we have a close call with a hurricane? I know that the past few years, and I know that a lot of times you guys are on live for sometimes, I think, 24 hours at a time, 48 hours at a time. I can imagine how crazy that is.
It is.
I just was wondering a few comments about that.
Oh, it is very crazy. In fact, as soon as hurricane season arrives, I just go into instant panic mode for the most part. But, you know, it's not something that we enjoy. But of course, we are here for our viewers. So we will be on TV for hours and hours on end. Poor Tim D. And I used to think back in the day that maybe I wanted to become a meteorologist, but not with what they have to deal with when it comes to trying to predict where these storms are going to go and the timing and where they're headed. Because they are working weeks in advance, you know, looking at all the data and trying to make sure that they pass along the most accurate information as possible. But I think the most I've ever been on air when it came to a hurricane was maybe 56 hours.
Wow.
And I was sitting at the anchor desk probably for about 12 to 13 hours at a time. We were working in different shifts. I slept at the station. We normally sleep here. And so you just get up and go and cover everything that you can. You know, our crews, they are out in the field for hours on end. You know, some they might have to sleep in the car. We try to get them a hotel room, but just depending on whatever is happening at the time. But it's definitely a hectic situation, but we are having meetings constantly, making sure that everyone has the most accurate information. We try to keep everyone safe. We don't want to send any of our reporters into the actual storm. Although I know sometimes you may look on TV and you see those live shots, it looks like the reporter is holding on for dear life or whatever it may be. That's not our goal. We don't, if they feel that they are in danger, they need to tell us so they're not in danger. We don't want to ever harm someone, especially within our own company. But it can be a very long time. I'll tell you that, of a lot of meetings, a lot of planning, and being on the air and just talking constantly.
Yeah. Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
I have a question. Back when Channel 4 split off to be independent,
mm-hmm.
we had some of the folks come in from both Channel 4 and another channel, and one of them predicted that within 20 years, we would see one local news source, meaning combined newspaper. Now we did see a couple of folks combine their efforts, but do you see the push being to do more cooperative, let's just call it cooperative rather than full combination, but cooperative efforts?
That is a strong possibility that is being discussed within our industry. Hopefully that doesn't happen because we want to give you options, but TV news, newspapers, social media, digital, that has basically, I don't want to say destroyed our business because that's a strong word, but it has definitely given us some challenges when it comes to operating because, you know, our ratings are not as high as they used to be because people don't have to depend on us every day. They don't have to sit down and watch to see what news is happening. They can easily go online and see all the news stories at just a click of a button. So basically a lot of companies are doing more with less now. I will tell you that when I started in this business, I had a photographer, I didn't have to edit, I didn't do anything, but now a lot of us are doing our own shooting and editing and whatever it may be. There's no makeup people behind the scenes or wardrobe. We do all that ourselves. I put on my own makeup every day too. This has become an industry where you basically have to know how to do it all. It's no longer just the anchor coming in and being, the voice and just sitting, and I have to do it all these days. And that's just kind of the effects of the business. When the recession happened in 2008, I saw a lot of my colleagues lose their jobs, a lot of salary cuts, and the business is still trying to recover from that. So it is challenging. I would hate to see that there's just only one news option, but as budgets continue to be slashed and basically newspapers are hanging on by a thread, who knows what the future might hold. How I see our business, I think we're going to be more digital in the future than TV. I think it might be something more on demand, like where you go to Netflix and you can just click on the different news stories that you want to see on your own time. I don't know if we'll still be doing the 5 and 6 o'clock news, but I will tell you just from different polls, people seem to trust local news more. They still go to local news for the source of different things, especially when it comes to weather. So who knows what the future may bring.
Anthony, there are a few more chat questions if you'd like to take a look at that.
All right, let's see here. On the national scale, this question from Jay, on the national scale, will independent news ever return, or will we permanently live in the news show that is more of an opinion show model? That is a good question. You know, that's something that's been made popular by cable news. You see a lot more opinion-based shows. I think that you're probably going to see more of that once again with the social media world, where people can just log on and give their own opinions now. I think that's something that's becoming more popular. This comment, with the abundance of stories that can be reported on each day, decisions have to be made as to which stories will be covered and the stories that will not be covered. How much control do the reporters have on deciding which stories they cover? So that is a good question. So I will tell you that we usually have about 2 meetings a day. We have a morning editorial meeting and also an afternoon editorial meeting. The reporters come into those meetings, which they used to be in person, but with COVID-19, we now do it through Zoom, just like how we're having this meeting right now. This is how our editorial meetings are held. The reporters usually pitch their stories. It may be, usually they try to go for at least 3 different story ideas on what they would be interested in covering for the day and just basically what they have found out. We also have an assignment manager who will go over some of the stories that we have, just things that they know that are happening in the community. And usually it's a group discussion on what stories will benefit our viewers most, and also our news director and other managers kind of make those decisions on what we can cover today or what maybe we'll have to wait until tomorrow, because we only have so much time, you know, that we can get, especially for a city the size of Jacksonville, the information that we can gather within a day. So usually it's kind of a group effort, but our bosses do make those final decisions on what stories will get covered. So, so my boss is actually in front of me right now, so he said some days.
All right. Anybody else have any other questions for Anthony? Okay. Anthony, thanks so much. That was very well done. And we'd like to make a contribution in your honor to the Rotary Foundation to End polio. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that.